Welcome back to the Cultural Curriculum Chat. I'm your host, Jebeh Edmunds, and today's conversation is one you don't want to miss. We're diving into resilience, humor, and the power of pushing through life's challenges with my amazing guest, Tracee Garner. Tracee is a best-selling author, dynamic speaker, and tireless disability advocate. Through her books and her work, she shows us what it means not just to survive but thrive in the face of adversity. With 20 published books under her belt and a voice that blends encouragement with keeping it real, Tracee inspires audiences to reframe what's possible in their own lives. Tracee, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. And your story is extraordinary. I mean, 20 published books. I just published my first one and you got 20. I'm just like, in amazed of your accomplishment. And your career, it spans traditional and indie publishing. You built a brand on showing others how to overcome their obstacles. So, for those of us who might not know your journey yet, could you share a little bit about your story and your background with our
Of
audience?
course. Of course, Jebeh, I can share that, first, I'm a child of God. I was born to, my dad was a pastor when I got here. He was an ordained minister in the 70s. And I think him and my mom, who loves to sing, they're like the pastor preaches and the lady, first lady leads the choir and stuff like that. But they just gave me a lot of faith and hope and built that into me from a very young age. At 2 years old, I was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. That is a degenerative muscle disease that weakens your muscles over time. So I walked with crutches until I was about 10 years old. And then I had to use a wheelchair. Really, I've been using a wheelchair full time since elementary school. I only walked when it was therapy time, but the rest of the time I was rolling around and paying my friends and candy to push me around. So before I got my power chair, I didn't get my power chair until I was in sixth grade. And I was absolutely liberated to move about and to do things on my own without having to be pushed and parked here and there and stuff like that. So it's just a liberating thing. It was actually kind of a joy and a welcome to get a power chair while most people might think that's, a detriment, but I was moving and grooving in my power chair. So I never really looked at my disability as a disability. Of course, I acknowledge that I have it, but my parents, I never remember them being sad or angry. Like, why did this happen to my child? They heard the news, I believe, when the diagnosis came. And they're like, okay, well, let's go on home and do what we got to do and move forward. So it never seemed truly burdensome to me, really, until now I'm aging. I'm almost 50, which is not really not aging. It's not old, but when you already have the disability, those aches and pains can sometimes seem a little bit more exponential. So there's that. But aging is hard no matter what. But with a disability, it seems even more egregious at times to me. But I always had an optimistic outlook about everything. I was very happy-go-lucky in K through 12. Got my butt kicked academically in college because I thought I was so wonderful and competent. But then the college people taught me something, but I still navigated. I still finished. It took me forever to finish my degree, but I had books out, when I was in community college. And that is what really motivated me. I won a contest at age 23, and that's how I got my first book deal. So it was just so exciting. It was a wonderful time. Yes, academics were hard for me, always hard, but I always had my writing, which comforted me and also gave me like a mental health outlet to live non-disabled through my characters. So I didn't always give my characters disability until later, honestly, when it became a thing to have own voices and more diversity, but it wasn't always a thing when I first started writing. So, and I didn't want to live, I didn't want to depict more people with disabilities. I wanted to be more fantasy and more, encouraging and triumphant. So a lot of my first characters didn't have disabilities, but when I won that contest, I got a trip to New York. I got it a monetary advance and I got to meet the editors at a big publishing house in New York. And it was just such a wonderful time. And really, I didn't think about disability at all. I loved entering the contest and winning because that demonstrated to me that it wasn't about disability. I got to hand my writing off to an editor who had not seen me and so who could not judge me on what they saw physically. Everybody can see the wheelchair. I have a very visible disability where some people have invisible disabilities, but I couldn't hide it. I couldn't go around, put a curtain on it and think, oh, this is just my little curtain I carry around. I had to be kind of out there. So I really credit my parents with teaching me so much and just my own drive and determination to try to rise above the issues that set me back as far as physically and bodily. So yeah, and I love life. I love people. I love life. I love chatting. Obviously, as you can tell, as I ramble on, but yeah, it's
Love
great.
it, I love it. Yes, oh, thank you, Tracy. And just that power of your pen, just, like you said, with your physical disability, you still have that power within to share your characters and their stories. And can you just share more about the lack of representation in our
Sure.
characters, in our stories, in our fictional stories that have
Mhm.
disabilities? Like you said before, we haven't seen that when you started your writing process and being a published author to now you're incorporating more of your characters that are diverse and disabled.
Yeah, I think it's been just a weird, it's kind of a weird thing for me as a person with a disability because, it's kind of like now we're being liberated and now we're being accepted. I mean, look at, the Crown Act for the hair, when formerly they would be like, oh no, put that away. That's too kinky or that doesn't look straight as your colleague or, go ahead and perm that. So people really had to hide a part of themselves because it wasn't acceptable. Now that we have more people that have more issues, more diversity, then it's like, I don't want to read a book about, regular, Black people that have no problems. And so it's really begin to ebb and change because now I would say, well, I don't want to read about them now because they're not relatable. If they have no problems, they're all rich, they're all good looking, that's like, that's first, that's not a reflection of our world. But also people would think that it could bring them down when you add real life. I always have been writing real life. People have been to jail. People try to kill other people. I write romantic suspense, of course. But now it's like we need those stories because we need to see people who overcame and who rose above in spite of their condition. We need to see more people with disabilities. I'm still the only African American person with a disability that goes to a lot of things. I was recently in an anthology, which is wonderful, but I didn't know I was the only Black person and probably I wasn't the only person that had a disability. But when I saw who else was in there, I was like, oh, I didn't know I was the only one. So we still face those things, which means we need more stories that people resonate with to kind of bring them out. Bring them out, bring them out.
Oh
But
yeah,
we
gotta
need
love that,
them to
Jay.
come out. We need
Yeah.
them to come out and just be exposed because we also are saying there's room for you here. There's room. We don't have to hide your story anymore in order to fit in. And everybody's got something. I mean, that's the other thing is that even when people were hiding and pretending everything is wonderful in fiction, they still had little issues, in the background. The author of those stories still had some things that they dealt with. And so now we get to put it on the page. We've been given a permission slip, which we shouldn't have had to been given one, but at least we got it eventually. At least we got the green light to go ahead and show all of ourselves and not just the fantasy or the perfect part.
Yes. And again, too, Tracy, how you said the permission slip, we shouldn't have had it in the first place, but it also resonates with your readers to say, wow,
Mhm,
these are real human, relatable characters. I
mhm,
can
mhm,
actually, in my mind's eye, see your character coming off the page to say, wow, I know someone that is like
mhm.
this character that Tracy portrayed. And those are the characters you could be rooting for. Those are characters you could be like,
Yes.
"Oh, you drive me crazy, but I understand why you are the way you are," you know? Those are the
Right,
kind of books
right.
that you're just like, "Ooh, I wonder what's gonna happen." You're just at the edge of your seat. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
And I love how you even talked about being in anthologies and being in with a series of other authors, creatives,
Mhm.
and that lack of representation still in our day and
Right.
age to say, wow, I didn't, realize when you get together and you're in these spaces, being the only African American woman in those
Right.
spaces this day and age. And some of us, I really want our listeners to know, because I talk a lot about cultural competency and
Mhm.
representation in stories and in books, and to say even as an author, as yourself with 20 published books, you still
Mhm.
run into those same homogenous spaces. So just to like
Right.
reiterate that with our listeners too.
Mhm.
So what pressing issue are you seeing right now with people with disabilities in this changing climate as an author, as a brand? Yeah, what pressing issues are
Yeah.
you seeing right now?
Well, in layman's terms, it's rough out here.
Oh yeah.
But, what I am so sad about is just that we're regressing. We're regressing in all the progress that we've made, all the, accommodations that we receive, the funding that we have. I have a caregiver. I have 3 caregivers actually who, do, about 52 hours of care for me in my home, and that is actually, somewhat subsidized, and I have a copay that I have to pay. And sometimes that copay, paying all 3 of them a different copay based on the number of hours that they work and the number of hours that government helps me with. They don't always pay it all. Sometimes they do. It really also depends on what I'm making as far as my salary and not being able to go over a certain amount, because if I do, then I'll have to pay more. So, and that shouldn't be the case. You should be able to, we're like, a society that we're I'm looking at veterans, they have a story, they fought for their country. They're able to earn money and receive disability. Whereas me, just, sorry, my story isn't as, wonderful. And the story isn't always wonderful because of injury and setback and all the things that happen in mental health trauma that happen. But we should be able to work too and also still receive some support. So we're just regressing so much on all fronts. I mean, disabilities, people with disabilities, myself included, face a number of hurdles when it comes to healthcare access, especially female healthcare access, getting those, life-saving, mammograms, OBGYN appointments, vaginal health and all of that kind of stuff. Even, birth. I don't have any children, and I kind of have always not wanted to even adopt just because of the stigma. Like, I would love to have children someday, but I've seen what some of my friends with disabilities go through trying to build their family. The stigma of being judged, the home visits and the assessments. Can you really take care of a child? Because you have a disability, and you will find a way if you have to, of course you will. And why should you be subject to more scrutiny, trying to build your family, even reproductive health as a person with a disability? Everything is normal and functioning, for many of us down there. And where there isn't, we have science and technology. So, female issues, I'm sure there are many male issues too that also get stigmatized. And also when it comes to reproductive health and stuff like that. But transportation, we're in a housing crisis. If affordable, accessible housing is an oxymoron, it doesn't exist. If it is accessible, it's in, it's not new, and it's old, or it's in really bad neighborhoods. And if it's affordable, it's actually that's the opposite. If it's affordable, it's in really bad neighborhoods. If it's accessible, it's out of your price range. You can never afford the features that are on some of these homes, smart homes, and ramps and wider doorways. So there's just so many. We're being attacked on so many fronts, and we've already had our civil rights movement, and
Yeah.
we're kind of getting ready to have a re civil rights movement. I hate to say it, but this generation is going to have to go through that all over again. And that's very, very sad. All the accomplished our ancestors made and the people before us, and people even being thrown out of their wheelchairs and trying to climb the Capitol steps. there are videos of that people need to
Yeah.
watch. And like, I don't can't be thrown out of my wheelchair. I'm like, I'm too pretty. Like,
Yeah.
please, I can't go to
Yes.
jail. Like, so I don't have any money to get out if I go. So, so just things like that are kind of terrifying. And I don't think people realize the stress it can bring too, and also cause me more disease, more, disease is related to stress a
Yeah.
lot of times. And of course, it's hereditary and other things, but it's just terrifying to think about having to fight all over again for the rights that we already fought for.
Exactly. But you totally, nailed that with the regression of so many. And I feel like so many of us, especially in this country where it comes to disability rights, and even with other marginalized groups with their civil rights as well. Oh, we've been through that. We've been there,
Mhm.
we've done that. I see plenty of access at our stores for parking for people with
Right.
disabilities, and they feel
Mhm.
like, oh, we checked the box already, so we're good. And I'm
Right.
really
Right.
glad that you've shown a light again on if it is affordable, it's not ADA compliant or,
Right.
and there's so many things that are accommodating even for our students too. Are they
Mhm.
getting the needs that they need as well? So, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very scary times that we are in. Your story about fighting for independence, even working through, state rehabilitation to secure, you said with caregivers, even
Mhm.
a modified vehicle that you could operate
Yes.
yourself. How did that battle shape your perspective on your own self-advocacy?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it really challenged me. Those were some really dark times for me, kind of fighting with the state. I've been through that process now twice. I went through it this year. The first time I went through it was 19 years ago when I was in my 20s. I was denied 7 times for rehabilitation support, for funding to pay for my van. And make no mistake, me and my family have to pay for the actual van. And then state and vocational rehabilitation pays for just the modifications. They're not going to give you a vehicle and pay for the modifications. So the first time around, I was denied 7 times. Now, what was so interesting about that is that after I pushed back and I appealed my seventh time, they invited me down and gave me a tenacity award. Like, I didn't know that's what I was going down there for. I thought I was going down just to talk to the rehabilitation counselors about, what I went through, and I showed them the van. And then when I came back in, they were like, and now we'd like to present Tracee Garner with the tenacity awards. Like, I got an award just for taking them to task. And so I will say the second time around was so much more wonderful, but I also think that they were like, we don't want to go through this again. We're not going to deny her. So one thing that happened is I proved myself, right? I proved to myself, and I learned a lot of things, which I wrote about in my book on disability, is that, you can ask for a new counselor. We're so afraid to change people. We're so afraid to make a ruckus. You can ask for a new doctor. That doctor is not doing, what you ask, or they just seem obtuse. They're not really trying to be helpful, but it's so hard. It's almost like a marriage. You just can't get out of it. Like, I want to divorce you, but I want to get out of here. And that kind of change is actually great. You don't have to go through the lawyers and everything, but you can just say, I'd really like to find someone new to work with who is willing to be more helpful. And I didn't do that. I had the same counselor deny me 7 different times. And then for some reason, they gave me a new counselor. He was very, very new and kind of didn't know what he was doing. And I thank God for that naivety that he had, which gave me, the opportunity to move forward. And then probably wasn't anything about the new counselor. It was just that they were exhausted seeing me come through and appeal, so many times. And what I went through this last time, though, was just feeling worthy. I actually had just come off a hospitalization. When I thought about what the van cost, I was like, I could buy a condo down south for what it costs to have these modifications put on. So then I had kind of a crisis of belief and just doubting myself. And I really dragged my feet on some of the paperwork. And it was only because of a friend who was like, you're worthy of this. They have the funds and they'll get more funds. and you know that they are denying other people. So don't let them deny you. I really had to get some of my confidence back because you have to choose your battles as an advocate because to war with every corner of life is really exhausting. So I had to choose that I was going to choose the ban because it meant liberation. The other thing that people don't understand is that one time I had to call my cousin to take my mom to the doctor. Like things like that weigh on me. Like, what if I had children? Like, I know people they can take the bus, but I also live in a place you can't take a sick baby on the bus. You'll never get there. So I just thought about things. I could drive myself to the doctor. When I had my old van before it broke down, I have driven myself to the ER because I had to, because there were no other options. And so if I could just move forward and get my mojo back and almost really coaching myself, I've been looking into in the last couple of years coaching yourself. And I've been trying to study practices where you coach yourself. Like I coach people through the book and how to publish their book and stuff. But we need to be, resilient in coaching ourselves. And we also need friends. It was only because that friend that said, you're worthy, you deserve this ban. Stop worrying about the cost. They'll deny some other schmuck and, they'll just keep denying people because they can. They don't want you to pursue things. They don't want you to push back. They don't want you to appeal. So just had to give myself a pep talk. It took several months. And I remember I still have the email that I wrote to my calendar, my counselor. I said, I'm ready. Like, I deserve this. I'm going to pursue this. I'm sorry I've been dragging my feet and not turning things in a timely manner. But that was a manifestation of me just doubting. And I got my van on May 12th. I got the modifications. It took almost over a year. And that's the other thing. Processes take so long. They don't have to take this long. But by the time, counselors get ready to do their part and you get ready and you got to get a doctor's note. I mean, people just do not realize the hurdles that we have to go through. I'm not 16 going to the DMV and taking one test and doing a driving thing. No, I'm having several evaluations. I have doctor's notes. Doctors have to sign off. Are you going to have a seizure? I never had a seizure in my life. But there's all these things that they bring up like, well, should you be driving? Are your muscles strong enough? Are you going to die? And I think the thing I told my counselor, the first one 20 years ago was just, you could get hit by a bus crossing the street. Should you not eat lunch? You're still going to do the things you want to do and need to do, without this negative, Nancy riding your back all day. So, you just have to talk to yourself. You have to seek encouragement from others. I've been doing a lot of journaling. I read back over those and think, wow, look, I made it that day and I made it that day and I made it that day. And I used to resist journaling because I write so much. I'm like, I need to journal. I'm journaling, writing 100,000 word books. Like, what are you talking about? So I just started doing more of it. And I only do like monthly reflections or weekly reflections. And it's almost like a journaling light. So I don't have to commit to doing like this long shadow work. I can just do a little snippet. How'd your day go? How'd your go? What did you learn? And I just kind of do like a little light version of journaling.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, because it is daunting as a writer. You just like, "Ugh, I got to write again about me."
Yes. What am I supposed to talk
Yes,
about?
but what am I supposed to talk about? But yeah, that tenacity award, that just it floors me because you didn't give up, yes, but if you hadn't denied me so many times and so many other people, there wouldn't be an award for my tenacity, for something
Right.
I
Right.
need to have my freedom.
Hmm.
And that's another thing. I love how you talked about you can change your counselor, you can request a different doctor or caregiver. But let's talk about our employers as well, because there are lots
Hmm.
of us, thousands of us with disabilities, visible or invisible. How can our employers better tap into the talents of our disabled workforce? What
Yeah,
would
that's
be your
such.
advice for them? Mm-hmm.
Mhm. What I would say is just go ahead and hire them. I mean, you never know. I mean, why do we have to prove so much and demonstrate so much on paper? Why don't you just try? Why don't you just open your mind to the possibilities and the capabilities? What was really cool? It's both cool and bad. There is something called in the federal government called the Workforce Recruitment Program. you get to have people with disabilities come in and work. I worked multiple summers, maybe 4 summers, total for for a defense agency. And my salary was not paid by that agency. It was paid by the federal government. So it's almost like you're getting a free employee. And so there were millions of us all around the country that were in the workforce recruitment program at different agencies, different federal agencies. And when those employers saw us, they were like, I'm not paying for this. Sure, come on over. It was like a no risk almost trial, a no risk trial for them to see. And I actually got hired twice for a longer term than my summer term. And so then that's because, and so then they had to start paying me when they hired me, on their books. So I hate that that had to be the case, but in order to, sometimes you got to do a trial run. You have to, I don't think it's like that anymore because we have a lot of mandates. But here again, the regression, the federal government and other small business, corporate, private sector are going to say, you don't have to hire them anymore. Now we don't have to do anything because the mandates are going to be removed. People are no longer going to be caring about quotas. They're no longer going to be caring about a diverse workforce. And so those things that were protecting us and giving us opportunity may very well be gone. I do have hope that it's all going to work itself out, but I also feel like some of the advocates that we have now, they're not like your mother and dad advocates. Like the stamina is not quite there. Like when I do see young people rallying and supporting, I'm like, yes, yes, we're going to make it. We're going to make it. If you're going to lead, we're going to make it. But I also see people, kind of selling us out. Like, who cares? Blow up the whole world. So, we have both those sides kind of warring with each other, and also the recruitment effort by, nefarious groups that are kind of taking people away from, fighting because they don't want to, because they want to go join something else, a militia or, other oppressive organizations, I'll say.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, employers should just open their mind. There are tax write-offs for making things accessible. There are other employers that they can look to get help. Like I would like to hire somebody with a disability. What did you do? I see you have Wegmans is really good for hiring people with disabilities. They have a lot of people that are helping hands. They actually wear shirts that say helping hands. And I am always on the lookout for them because they are always really and truly helping hands. So I think employers can look to organizations that have implemented some type of program and been successful and really learn from each other. And then what I'll say is that sometimes we get into an employment situation. This kind of happened to me in school when I went to college. You get into college and you're so thankful, but then you're not sure where the supports are. So we don't just need you to place us in a position, but we need supports for us to retain that position. Like a lot of employers may get kind of high minded and say, well, I tried, I employed one, and oh my gosh, it just didn't work out. And now I had to fire them. Well, you have to ask yourself, did you give any support? Did you make the desk? Did you give them the ergonomic chair that nobody wants to give, but you have one in your office for your back? So you have to really look at the things. People just want to say they did something and, oh, if it didn't work out, it's not my fault. But we have to go a step further. So hiring is one hurdle. Staying is another completely different hurdle. And sometimes the supports and the environment of other colleagues. And they kind of, when somebody has a stroke and they try to come back to work, you cannot believe the stories and the adversity they go through. Well, he's not himself. Of course, he's not himself. He had a stroke. And they kind of almost make things more impossible for you. They don't welcome you back. They're like, oh, you're too old now. Oh, you've slowed down. Oh, that stroke really did a number on you. Why don't you just go home and go on disability? Like, to me, that is so sad. And I've seen people do that. When you are not yourself or you have an injury, what if that happened to you? Would you want somebody to say, oh, you slowed down. You're too old. You can't really keep up with production anymore. Instead of, the first thing they ask you on the Social Security application is, did you or your boss modify the job? Because they want you to stay
That
at
part.
work. They don't want to pay
They
you.
do.
And
Yep.
most people say
Yes.
no because, or they may have tried, but they received pushback. They didn't get, a different work schedule. The boss was like, and the pandemic really leveled a little bit the playing field because I have had bosses that told me, what can you do from home? Seems like you should come in every day. The commute is hard. The wear and tear on my vehicle is difficult. It's difficult for me to physically sit up and not have the help that I need. And then what? Oh, everybody must be able to do something from home. Here's the pandemic. So I credit the pandemic, as devastating as it was, but for kind of leveling things, saying, oh, you have to work from home now. And I guess that's okay. I guess you'll get your work done somehow, but I've had people tell me, what can you do from home? I think you should come in, every day. And, why? So you can just look at me, and
Yes.
you don't care about my comfort or, that I'm actually more productive and do more work at home than I did
Yes.
while I was at work because I was uncomfortable for one. At home, I
Yes.
have my own setup. I have the desk that I need. I have the keyboard that I need, the desktop. So it did help some, but there's still so many employers that just power trip because they can, because they are in an elevated position and they use that to look
And
down on you, to talk
yeah.
about what you can and cannot do. And that's
And pit
unfortunate.
yeah, and pit you against your other employees to say, "Oh, you're getting
Hmm.
preferential treatment." No, this is so I can have the accommodation so I can do my work that you
Right.
hired me to do. But you're right, that retention is so important. When I talk to companies, it's like we recruit, but then is my employee psychologically safe here? The pushback, like you reiterated again, you're right. With the pandemic, it did level off. But now coming back through that, people still feel like, oh, you're not yourself. Oh, you
Mm-hmm.
can't do the job that you used to. And that hurts somebody's, mental health as well, because,
Hmm.
of course, like you said, of a stroke survivor, and they go, of course, I'm not my 100% self. I had a traumatic brain
Hmm.
injury. So yeah, it's we've got a long ways to go, which is so sad to say. But let's kind of switch gears because I love what you've done with your 20 books. I tell you, I know you got more books than you, Tracy. I can just feel it.
Absolutely.
So what are the main influences that help you stay in your flow as a writer and
Mhm.
sharing your wealth of creativity with the world? So yeah, what are your main influences that get you going?
Sure. Just going back to my parents again, my parents have a beautiful love story. Even though my dad passed away in 2011, my mom actually came up here to Virginia, or really DC, to work for the federal government. She was recruited at 17 from Georgia to work, and she's been there 42 years. And she's already been retired now for almost 12 years. But she came up, and my dad was in college, and they were high school sweethearts. And so he dropped out of college to come up here with her and find a job. And then they got married. And so they also went to prom with two different people and then ended up leaving together somehow. I think my dad took another girl home and came back to prom. And then, I guess they danced and then they left together. But it's just so many little snippets of their life. And, I used to like, I remember being a child and my parents would kiss in front of me and my brother, anyone, which I think is wonderful, show public displays of affection. And then my friend would be like, oh, well, that's so romantic. Your parents kiss in front of each other. Wow, my parents don't do anything like that. And I was like, really? That's gross. I think it's disgusting. But now as an older adult, I'm like, wow, that really was, because now I don't see anybody hardly. I wondered if couples even like each other, because you
Mhm.
just don't see that. Like people are on their phone, even when they're at, a romantic dinner and candlelight. And I'm just thinking, wow, that's kind of sad. So I'm grateful to them for their public displays. I'm grateful for the stories that my mom still shares with me about the romance, even though, like I said, my dad is gone. Just a really wonderful 41, I forget how many years, but over 40-year love affair. And just even having a special needs child, they didn't let that. A lot of marriages deteriorate when your child is diagnosed with a disability, which is sad because you made this together and now one of you wants to abandon cart. right?
Yeah.
So they stopped to it, they stuck together, especially, African American parents. There's a lot of issues with, Black males having children with disabilities. And it's not so much anymore because you see so many on TikTok, on Instagram, really showing you how they're a present father. But that middle baby boomer generation, up to Gen Z, Gen X, really goes through something when a child does have that. And you're either going to stick together or, one of you is going to be like, I can't handle this. I'm out. So I just thank them. I thank God, for them, and they demonstrated love to me. And then the other thing is that I love my little romantic films. I love Footloose. That was one of my, and Dirty Dancing were like some of my
Oh,
favorite movies as a child. An Officer and a Gentleman. I shouldn't have been watching that at 13, but I did. I loved it when he carries her out, of the factory. And the other girl's like, let me go. Love letting it go. And you're just like, wow, okay. And she messed up her relationship because, because her guy, I think he committed suicide, which is really sad. But just the juxtaposition of those different relationship dynamics. I like giving my characters adversity and things to overcome, and they eventually find love in the happily ever after stories that I write. And so just that push and pull of love has always fascinated me. How do people make it? How do people get together, overcome things, and have faith? So I give them a lot. Trust me, in a suspense, they have a lot to overcome, but they eventually find the one that they want to be with, and it all works out. But just love cultivating stories and watching stories and hearing about romance. Maybe I'll write a couples romance book where couples tell me, what made them stick together. But I really did the desire to write in all genres. I want to write a stage play like Tyler Perry. I am
yeah.
working on my children's book. And right now, I'm also doing an anthology of disabled voices, all people with disabilities contributing to this one anthology that I'm working on. So I just love writing. It's wonderful. It really helps me. I think that I cannot. I tried to take off writing. I was like, I'm going to take a year sabbatical off writing, and even my brain was like, "What? You said what?" Like, no, we not. We will always have to create. So I just can't
Yeah.
even stop if I wanted to.
Oh, I love that, Tracy. Oh, I love hearing just the relationships, what you grew up seeing and movies, and it's just amazing. And speaking of your wonderful, library of work, where can our listeners get your 20 plus books? Yes.
Yeah, they're available wherever books are sold, whatever you like to do. One of my series, 4 books, is in Audible too. So it's in print, ebook, and Audible. I'm going to make more in audio very soon. But you can visit me at traceegarner.com. And like I said, all my books are available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, lots of different places. So you can just Google me and I will pop up.
Love it. And yes, I will definitely have your information in the show notes. Tracy, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you for taking the time to share your wealth of knowledge, albeit disability rights, you as an
Mhm.
advocate, as well as an amazing, prolific author. And thank
Thank
you
you.
again. Oh, thank you so
Mhm.
much for sharing your
Mhm.
story and your work. And if this lifted you up, listeners and viewers, don't forget to subscribe to the Culture Curriculum Chat podcast. Until next time, I will see you here, same time next week. Bye bye.